They're not working now. They went back home. Why? Because they weren't connecting their ability to their feeling. They were
nothing to do with neuroses.
But what I'm saying is, all neuroses is a feeling that is inverted. So it's a feeling it's a feeling that instead of being able to flow freely in the way that we think of to be like creative ability, it's inverted. So the feeling is exactly what I mean by inverted. It's turned in on itself. So it's taken out on in a way that one might say negative, but not to say that's wrong. It's just it's like the natural flow of something goes one way, and then the other flow of it is like is going that way. So essentially, the first step in creativity being a tool to channel neurosis has to be allowing the neurosis out. Otherwise, it continues inverting itself. So yes, the first couple efforts come out as the only way I can do this is if I drink. Like the first couple parts I booked, it's because I drank before. I know this. I wanted it so badly, I was going to drink before the audition so I could get the part. Now I see clearly that I don't have to do that anymore. But I
wanted drinking help.
It helped remove the physical barrier, the anxiety barrier, the physical response that I would have when I walked into the audition. The nervousness, the anxiety.
But what you've learned from that experience,
what I've learned from that experience is that people go through these steps, these processes, so that they can feel more deeply what they're feeling in a society that doesn't honor feeling.
But then,
but you're saying that it's no longer necessary for you to drink.
What I'm saying is that was a necessary step for my process. And if you look at a lot of artists, if it's not alcohol, if it's not drugs, it's something like that. You know, artists that have totally changed our whole idea of culture. They used these things that people say, oh, they were self-medicating. Well, should they have gone to a psychologist to get a medicine that was going to numb them?
They should have gone to a psychologist and find out what was the reason why.
Well, maybe the world would have been completely different. We wouldn't have benefited from their art if they had gone to a psychologist who would have given them electric shock therapy and told them that their homosexuality was wrong.
Well, no.
I mean, no, but that's what they were doing.
They
were giving people shock therapy. Tennessee Williams never would have changed American theater.
100 years ago.
Tennessee Williams never would have changed American theater if he had gone to a psychologist to fix his problems the way that his society thought he should have. And I can list countless of other examples. Lauren would be a brilliant musician right now, no offense to Mommy, if we didn't believe in a society, if we didn't believe in a society where his hyperactivity was wrong. He would have been in a gifted school. But we think that was wrong, so we medicate them. We numb them and we tell them they need help.
If that's what you think. If that's what you think.
I mean, give me an example otherwise. Help me understand your perspective in a way that I'm not seeing.
Well, but you can point to 3, 10, 30, 500 people who have psychoses and have been successful artists.
I've been cultural shifting artists.
You need to let
me. But I mean, you said successful, and successful is an ambiguous word, so I just wanted to clarify.
Well, how do you define
I specifically mean...
How do you define successful
I specifically mean artists. I didn't say successful.
But how do you define successful?
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people who have shifted the cultural landscape. People who I have studied in school. People who...
You need like a nacho, but I'll give you 4.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I just wanted to make that distinction.
So doesn't that mean that since there are hundreds of thousands of artists all through the decades, that there must be 90% of them that haven't gone through those emotional areas
instead of a corn chip,
and still have changed society.
It's a jicama, yeah. So you can mix it up and eat it like a nacho, like a chip, or you can eat it with a fork. Either way.
Okay. Let me taste my
Okay, Uncle Erwin, sorry.
Yeah. So doesn't that mean that represents 10%? The implication, just because a couple of people do it, doesn't mean that art wouldn't change without them.
It's interesting that you say 10%.
You put it in a different place?
Yeah, I'll put this here.
I just want a little bit.
Okay. Just very little.
It's interesting that you say 10% because more and more quantum physics seems to be proving the idea that, I mean, quantum physics, neuroscience, all these are seeming to prove this idea that we are accessing probably about 10% of our brain right now. So it's
presentation.
It's interesting that the people
She's not used to class.
that the people who are attracting the most attention of the society, and that's why I use the word not success, but changing the cultural landscape. Those are people who are attracting the attention of the masses. Why are they attracting the attention of the masses? Well, Carl Jung, who I'm sure you've studied, who is the successor to Freud in modern psychology, suggests he was a big believer in the collective unconscious.
You understand these people are laughed at. Freud is laughed
Certainly,
at.
not Jung though. And he was a big believer in the collective unconscious. He was one of the 10%. But the idea of the collective unconscious being this thing that we are all tapping into, what some people would describe as God or life or the life force, or what quantum physics is proving as like a matrix, you know, of thought that we're all tapping into. It would make sense that the people who are attracting the most attention of the society are people who have done those things, who have excavated the norm, who have resisted or who have challenged or who have excavated the status quo and discovered their own, you know, the Henry David Thoreaus of the world, you know, the Einsteins or Stephen Hawkins, who's totally changing our opinion of our view of the universe, who most people would think of as retarded if they just saw him. And he's totally changing the scientific community because of the insights that he's tapped into. I think the 10% are pointing towards where the masses are going, are pointing towards what the masses are capable of tapping into. That's why the masses are paying attention to the 10%.
But it's not so necessarily.
That's a theory I have.
Yeah, but it's
Talk to me about why it's not.
It's not so, because what happens with many of these people who you see as a group of movers and shakers and changes is that their ideology is fashionable for a little while. Freud was considered the best thing for a little while, and now it's not. These things that you see as directional shifts are just cyclical changes as we work our way to where we need to be.
I agree.
Just the fact that it attracts attention does not mean that it is something that's going to move into perpetuity. It is a step, but a step is not necessarily a step in the right direction.
Right.
Just because somebody is doing
what is
something
right direction?
completely, well, the direction,
I mean, is it the direction that you believe in?
No.
Or is it the direction that is confirmed by who the masses are paying attention to?
Everybody has an opinion about direction, so everybody has an opinion about what they think is the direction.
Okay.
So no, it's not what I believe in, and it's not what the masses believe in. It is what is socially sustainable.
Okay, so
if we, as a society, believe in something, and it turns out that it destroys society,
exactly,
it is not a sustainable move. So even though it was attractive because of its uniqueness, even though it was
let's
something
talk about
that
sustainability.
we drew to because of its newness, doesn't make it
totally.
the right move.
I'm not saying
the
it's
right move is that it is something that moves society
in a cycle over
forward.
time.
And I'm not talking about micro society, what makes you feel better, or what makes him feel better, or what makes her feel better. I'm talking about macro society.
I'm hearing you.
A culture that is ahead.
So let's talk about sustainability. Autism, Alzheimer's, both on a higher rate, am I right, than ever before. Alzheimer's, autism. Both of those have to do with lots of things, but to me, it's symbolic of a society that does not value the kind of self-reflection that I'm speaking of. The kind of self-reflection that says, instead of going to somebody else to teach me about, like, instead of going to somebody else and saying, something's wrong with me, there's a problem, fix it, there's another kind of reflection that says, that says, help me think critically about my own life, right? So much of what we've known in the past has to do with, like what you're saying. Those people need help. There's a problem. That's the problem. Fix it. To me, I think, and I see this reflected in arts education. If you look at arts education in schools, massively being wiped out, and then you look at the rate of these mental disorders, massively up. More people on antidepressants and clinical drugs to help with their emotions than ever before. Well, I think that there's a correlation, and I'm not just looking at the micro, this is how I feel because I'm an artist. I'm looking at the macro education, mental illness, these things. So the reason why I mentioned Jung is because the ideas that he was investigating, you know, as a student, as an apprentice of Freud, you may say that they're flash in the pan, but they're actually what's the word? Verifiable throughout time. Okay. From the Greeks. So from the Greeks to now. In terms of the themes of what he's suggesting.
So let me address those things. Speaking of verifiability, let me start. Let's see, where do I start? Just because two things exist, if they are not existing in a vacuum, there is no way to prove and no reason to believe their relation.
Can you say that again?
Just because the school system has eliminated art programs and there is an increase in Alzheimer's doesn't mean that there is a correlation any more than, as Jordan would say, people who eat chicken get Alzheimer's. Because two things exist, but not in a vacuum. They may not at all be related. Next, we need to address the other thing. Things like Alzheimer's and stuff like that.
Specifically speaking to the correlation with mental illness, autism, antidepressants.
Those are physiological things. You can look at the brain.
Well, that's something that you believe right now because that's fashionable right now in science.
No. It's not fashionable. It's there.
It's fashionable right now in science.
You can take a picture of a brain and see the calcium in the brain.
Right, but what we don't know is what Jung was suggesting is this idea that is connected to a lot, like the pineal gland. There's a lot of new research about the pineal gland and what the function of it. There's actually a really great documentary called DMT, the spirit molecule. It deals with the idea that psychedelic research took a halt from the 60s to the 90s. Psychedelic research, if you look at indigenous cultures, indigenous to this earth, they were doing psychedelics. That was part of their ritual, their community, their thing. Then the government shut it down, shut the research to that down. Now, why is it that one of the things that is ancient to humanity as something as a psychedelic ritual, something that all cultures have done, that our culture would shut that research down from the 60s to the 90s? Do you think that affected our psychology at all? I think so. I think that the research that they're finding out has to do with what Jung was tapping into, this idea of the collective and what quantum physics is tapping into, what the Greeks were tapping into, what the ancients. So I'm not just talking about flash in the pan. I'm talking about things that are recurring processes and themes.
Or you're tying things together that have no correlation.
Well, I'm perhaps seeing a coincidence, which to me is to coincide for things to come together, but now we think of coincidence as something to dismiss. But if you look at the etymology of the word, it means to coincide. So I'm seeing
But it doesn't make it any more correlated what it means.
I'm not interested in correlation. I'm interested in tapping into things that, like you're saying,
but then why not choose black toenails and say anybody with a black toenail is going to have Alzheimer's? Why not just pick it out of the sky?
I'm just tapping into recurring themes and processes. That, for example, I went to USC and they had a Renaissance Scholars Program where they awarded people for studying disparate fields. So someone's studying neuroscience and theater, or music and quantum physics, right? I was a representative of the school. I talked to people about this. I worked at the Office of Admissions. I was an RA in the dorm. I became very familiar with why the university had that policy, why that was something they value so much, this idea of a Renaissance scholar, this idea of Renaissance being a rebirth of culture, a rebirth of ideas. Why is it that two disparate fields coming together equals a resurgence or something that we haven't seen, a cultural shift, something that changes society for the better? Well, in my mind, and from what I learned from that experience, I think it has to do with marrying these different ideas that we have in society thought of as separate. So religion and politics, no, those are separate, right? Or whatever else, science and art, those are separate. But what happens when you look at the similarities between those drives in people? You know, the thing that drives somebody to be a musician and the same thing that would drive somebody to be a scientist coming together in one mind, using more than the 10% of the brain that the scientists say that we're currently using. You know, what is that doing to the dark matter in the brain? And then in turn to the collective matter that is used to separating things.
Collective matter, tell me what that is.
Do you have a Ziploc bag?
You're gonna need to move.
The collective matter is whatever we want it to be. However we want to see it.
Is that enough food?
Yeah, that's what
Zenobia, is that enough food?
I thought it was the start.
Well, I have more.
Some of my salad.
We have more.
I need to make it enough.
Yeah.
Grandma, would you like some of this salad? Because I'm not going to eat it all.
That's yours?
Yeah,
really
I'm not
good.
gonna, you made too
Let's
much.
go eat.
No, I'm definitely not going to eat it all.
She won't.
What is it? The taco meat? Is it the same?
It's a taco salad.
It's a taco salad.
Oh, let me take a picture first.
How it makes the
Wait, let me take a picture
Well,
first.
Grandma.
No.
Let me take a picture first.
Are you gonna take a picture?
Post everything he eats. He posts everything he eats.